I'm Adam Rossen with the Rossen Law Firm, Federal Criminal Defense Attorneys, and in today's video, we're going to talk about the Garland Memo's effect on the disparity between cocaine, powdered cocaine, and crack cocaine at the federal level. So before we go into the Garland Memo and its effects and changes on the huge disparity in sentencing between powdered cocaine and crack cocaine, it's important if we go way back and kind of learn a little bit about the history of the law, right? And so prior to 2010, the sentencing disparity for the mandatory minimum was huge, and the amount of drugs was a big difference. So for powdered cocaine, you needed 500 grams to trigger the 5-year mandatory minimum. But for crack cocaine, you only needed 5 grams, right? That's 100-to-1 disparity for the same mandatory minimum. Well, who does that punish, right? Of course, we know that punishes minorities. So in 2010, they came out with the Fair Sentencing Act. Now, is it really fair? Well, it's fairer, so maybe they should have called it the slightly better and more fair Sentencing Act, but still not fair, right? That's kind of what I think. But what did that do? Well, it changed the amount of drugs, the amount of crack cocaine. It raised it to 28 grams. Okay, so from 5 to 28, and it kept the powder cocaine limit at 500. So instead of 100-to-1, it now is 18-to-1, against crack cocaine. Again, who does that punish? Minorities, right? Is that fair? Well, more fair than 100-to-1. And it also removed mandatory minimums for simple possession of crack cocaine. So it gave the judges more discretion in there, right, in that way for those kind of drugs, but we're still talking about a huge disparity here. So since 2010, it's been better, but still not good enough. So what did the Garland Memo actually say, and what is it going to do? Well, it's important to note that the Garland Memo does not change the law. Remember, Congress changes the law. And so when we had the Fair Sentencing Act, that was an act of U.S. Congress that changed that. But what the Garland Memo does is it affects how the DOJ prosecutors will prosecute these crimes. And the memo states that the prosecutors should be reviewing the amounts for crack cocaine and charging crimes regarding to crack cocaine using the amounts provided for powdered cocaine, okay, which is a huge difference to really remove that 18-to-1 disparity on the mandatory minimums and the penalties that get triggered based on the amounts of drugs. So that's what the instruction to the prosecutors is that on any crack cocaine case, they need to be reviewing the amounts in the light as if it were powder cocaine. And the reasons behind it are because scientific studies have shown that there's no difference in the pharmacological effects between powdered and crack cocaine. Okay, one's not more dangerous than the other, one's not more addictive than the other. They're basically the same, yet minorities are significantly have a significant higher likelihood of using crack cocaine, and therefore this is a form of discrimination or racism, and this needs to be remedied. So that's kind of the reasoning behind this, which is, I think, very sound and good reasoning. And you see some of our more archaic, tough-on-crime laws that were passed in the 80s and early 90s have been, slowly changing and slowly getting better. And kudos to Attorney General Merrick Garland for putting forth this memo for DOJ, so that way we can have, all we want, right, is a justice system that is fair. So that's really good news. Now, that brings questions, though. Well, it's only been a few months since these memos came out, so what's going to happen? Are there prosecutors actually going to follow them? What about rogue prosecutors that believe that they need to be tough on crime, right? And if so, if they don't follow it, are there going to be any penalties? And they're still changing these, their enforcement. They're still kind of coming forth with new guidelines. So anything to do with the government, as we all know, is a slow and protracted process, but really we hope that this moves along fast. And of course, we'll report back to everybody what we see on our federal drug cases, report back to everybody so they can know, is this actually making a difference, and are people's lives being changed for the better? So that's what we have as far as the Garland Memo's effect on drug cases and the difference between crack cocaine and powdered cocaine. If anybody has any questions, if you have a case like this or really any federal case, give us a call. We'd love to talk about the case and help. 754-206-6200. Take care.